All right. Hello, everyone. It is wonderful to be here. Welcome to the VML. We are sponsored by Wizards of the Coast, and we are an 11-week-long MTG A-League, which showcases the talents of amazing people of marginalized genders within the Magic community. This is season 11, and there are 128 total players, which filled up very quickly. So, again, keep an eye out because this is divided into 16 divisions, 7 weeks of round robin play. Last week was the wild card round, and now we have cut to the top 32. So what are these players playing for? There's pretty high stakes here. In addition to cash prizing at the top 16, players get qualifier weekend badges, and the top 8 get RC invites. And again, this is in capital letters here, and they get to compete in our capstone event, the VML Championships, where the top 8 players from seasons 11, 12, and 13 duke it out. And the top 2 players will receive invitations to the following Magic the Gathering Pro Tour. I am Skybilz, your play-by-play. I have my wonderful co-commentator, co-host here on color commentary, Kuro, and we have a very special guest here. We have Dana Fischer. How y'all doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you so much.
I'm
All
doing
right.
fantastic. I can't wait to. This is great.
So I want to talk to Dana a little bit here because, again, it is just such an honor to have you here as a special guest. Dana, why don't you introduce yourself and let us know about your feats of strength within Magic the Gathering?
Yeah. So, I'm Dana Fischer. You can find me almost everywhere at Dana Fischer MTG. Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Twitch is Fisher Magic, which is just a little bit different, but the same kind of stuff. I mostly play competitively. I stream a little bit as well, but I've played competitively for 7 years now, and I'm 13, so that's over half my life. And I've been playing Magic for almost 10 years. And I'm the youngest in the US to qualify for a regional championship, and day 2 at Grand Prix and cash at Grand Prix. So I've always focused on doing all the competitive stuff.
And I found out a short time ago, because again, I was doing some research before we had you on as a special guest. You have recently become a judge as well, which is
Yes.
really awesome. Do you want to go into
Just
that?
in the past couple of months, I qualified for the regional championship in Dallas. And when there were some RCQs that I couldn't play in, I decided that I would get some more experience judging them with some of my judge friends.
And one other exciting thing, but maybe scary for those of us who play in the VML, Dana will be eligible to join us next season. So again, I refer to Dana as future VML champion just with all of that experience. I would not want to mess with Dana nor be in the division that Dana's in, because Dana's just gonna sweep that. I'm just saying.
Thank
Like,
you.
that's where my money is going on that.
Thank you.
Right?
Yeah, I'm super stoked to play next season. Finally, we got everything cleared because it can be odd being under 18, but being 13 and up makes it so much easier. So,
All right. Well, we do need to get through this season. Now, this is the top 32. The stakes cannot be any bigger, so let us get down to the break. All right, so let's go to our wonderful expert here. Kuro, what is your first impression when looking at the breakdown here of decks this week for the top 32?
Well, it's interesting here. I distinctly remember before the more upper echelons of the tournament right now, Boros aggro, Boros tokens had a lot stronger impact and a lot more representation across the board. And now that seems to be phased out a little bit here in favor of Dimir midrange and Esper midrange. I think partly in part to deal with Azorius control as an archetype. Because Azorius control can main deck things such as temporary lockdown, which just shuts down red-white tokens with one card usually. However, Dimir midrange and Esper can have a really good handle on those lists. We do see a couple other things beyond that, but we can clearly see that half of the meta is blue-based decks that deal with card advantage and board advantage, not so much with aggression.
So I want to know, like, this is a question for everyone out there too. What happened to Boros Convoke? I feel like it has fallen from grace since I was eliminated, unfortunately, in the final week of Swiss play here. And speaking of decks that have fallen from grace, Dana, do you notice we were talking about this in the pre-show? 5-color domain in the kind of tiny part of the pie here. What do you think
Yeah.
happened to 5-color domain?
Honestly, the main thing would be Boros Convoke. As soon as that started to spike, that 5-color domain has a really hard time beating those aggressive decks, as well as Azorius Control started to see an uprising, which also is tougher domain for the opposite reason, that it can deal with all the threats super easily. And then the Temur ramp deck, which I've just been seeing across the last few weeks, is also just a good card advantage deck that can sometimes beat out domain and have combos that domain just can't handle.
Yeah, and on that note too, because again, Data absolutely loves anything with green in it. I've noticed that the first few options, Dimir midrange, Esper midrange, Azorius control. Where's the green? Y'all have to help me out here. When I say y'all, everyone registering text for the VML. We're going to be curious to see where that takes us. However, that will be reflected within the matches here. So let's roll on down to our first match here of the top 32. We have Cora here, and we are looking at Dimir control, everyone's favorite Chrome host Seed Shark being the main appearance here. And let's say, why did you choose your deck this week? And Faye says, I've made a point of playing a different deck, again, talking about getting VML'd every week to try to avoid being counterpicked for the top 32. That is part of the VML way here. So, Kuro, as a big fan of things with blue, black, white in it, in the Esper triangle there, what are you thinking about this deck? And playing against it, what would frighten you?
Is that out of air that I see in the main deck? Am I viewing this correctly? We have 2 copies of Out of Air, which works really nicely with Chrome Host Siege Shark because it's a 4-mana spell that you can pay 2 mana for. That's kind of epic, I'm not gonna lie. And that does really well against all the creatures that are in the format. And it's a catch-all. Yeah, it's a catch-all counterspell too for anything else. You have some really good removal pieces. Memory Deluge, great counter advantage. You have the Murex for tokens. Even a couple copies of what is it? The End is what it's called
Mm-hmm.
to exile things. Yeah. So you have a lot of really. It's just blue black has the most versatility in terms of dealing with threats. Because you can counterspell things and you can deal with creatures the best. It obviously has problems with enchantments sometimes, but overall you have a lot of really good tools for most threats that are coming your way, especially planeswalkers, which are the biggest threats.
All right, and I'm also looking at the main board and the sideboard of the main and side put together. Dana, what is one card you don't want to see right now in standard out of this? What are you thinking?
One card that's I generally play Golgari midrange, and for me, Aquazots is one of the toughest cards to deal with, and I see that in the sideboard.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only way I have to remove it is Terra Sunder. Obviously, that's not the case here, but it's still just a powerful threat that can keep recurring itself. And I am personally a very big fan of Aquazots.
All right, we're going to keep an eye on that as we move to the side deck here. And their opponent is Dylan, and Dylan is on Dimir midrange again, kind of looking at those same few colors here in Magic. Preacher of the Schism, enormous butt. We're going to be talking about the importance of big butts here in terms of defense, and also the deep cavern bat. Those bats just won't go away. So, Dana, do you have any cards that you would like to play in standard right now? I'm going to ask you the opposite here for this deck.
Deep Cavern Bat is just like such a good card. Every
Yes.
time I cast a bat, I feel so happy with myself, especially on turn 2. The bat's the bat. It's the best.
Yes, and speaking of the mana curve here, Kuro, is there anything that Dylan here, what would be the optimized hand here going into game 1, we'll call it?
I think against a control deck, the Evolved Sleeper is going to be very important, but it gets killed kind of easily. However, the more creatures you can dedicate to the board on the early game allow you to deal with the removal very proactively. Deep Cavern Bat gets there, Evolved Sleeper can get there and build really fast. You have make disappears afterwards. So Dylan's going to have to think very hard about whether they want to commit creatures to the board or hold up counter magic. And flash creatures are going to be really helpful with that, like Fairy Mastermind or the abilities of Evolve Sleeper. You can hold up mana and play on your opponent's end step. There's going to be a lot of resource management in this match for sure.
All right, well, I'm excited to see what happens for this match, and for you, Dylan, we will say also Cat with favorite Planeswalker going into game number 1. All right, looks like Dylan will be going first here, and we have an opener, and it looks like there is some swamps missing here, as there's a mulligan into the second hand here, looking a little bit more efficient, a little scary in terms of, you better hope you hit those land draws here. What do you think of this take, Dana?
I think this is a fine keep. The main card for this hand is Deduce. And there's a second one right there, because Deduce gives you 1 look for 2 mana. And then if you still don't find the land by your 3rd turn, you can crack the close. So that's 2 extra looks to find at least 1 more land, which gets you closer to the 4th land, which is your magic number that you want.
All right, Cora, how do you feel about this so far? We have 2 mana and Evolve Sleeper, and Cora here kind of looking for that 3rd land right now. Has a couple turns to do it into the deep cavern bat here. How do you feel about this situation here? And what do you think would be a good decision right now to take with the bat?
If I were Dylan here, I'd probably take the Path of Peril, because if Cora were to draw any land at all, yeah, it gets rid of all the board for 3 mana very conveniently. The card draw is not really that much of a threat right now because Cora is lacking in lands, which is what a control deck needs to function. Without those lands, you don't have a board state, and that's how control wins, is by developing their board state. Right now, Cora is in a really unfortunate position.
All right, down the middle here for 2, casting the Deduce, as Dana was saying. That's a very efficient card. And the 3rd land is hit here, so very good news here for Cora. Unfortunately, it looks like 4 might be the gas for this hand here. So, Dana, what do you think it should be done here? Maybe drawing a card off of the Deduce token here. What do you think that Cora needs to hit the most right?
Yeah, I think a 4th land, because when you get the 4th land, you can Memory Deluge. I think the bat needs to get countered, because I think if the Deadly Cover-Up or the end gets taken, it gets a lot harder. But if there wasn't the need to counter that, I would definitely be looking for the land, which they did find, because Memory Deluge, because finding the 1 land for Memory Deluge gets you so much more card selection.
And this looks like, again, this doesn't look like either player's in trouble right now, despite the 10 life here for Cora. And we're going to see the end here casted on Preacher of the Schism. So again, and that is a Spell Pierce from the hand from Dylan. And again, a very relevant card early game here. So given the current board state, Kuro, what do you think that Dylan needs to do to close this game out?
Well, Dylan, like I said earlier, playing the resources is really important here. Cora just drew a land that is not allow fair to cast Deadly Cover Up, which is crucial right now. Dylan actually had a 2-turn clock last turn, holding up the counterspell, and Evolve Sleeper is going to be able to pump up as well. It's going to be really difficult to come back from this.
Yeah, that is a March of Rexaro, but here comes Gix, Yawgmoth Praetor again, just a real value engine here. And again, if you're facing any deck with black that has Gix in it, this is terrifying combined with the bat here. Let's see real quickly what Cora is going to do here, and this is a really tough spot to come back from, as it looks like this might be game number 1. Let's see what happens with the March of Wretched Sorrow, excuse me, for the Deadly Cover Up here, and going for, let's see.
I think the
And
only
okay.
viable option is the sleeper, because anything else, killing the bat doesn't result in a win. Killing the Preacher, you can't even do that. And unfortunately, Cora is using fair board wipe, which makes it even more difficult to do anything.
Wow. To prevent the life gain. That was a very nice play.
Wow, GG's.
Especially since Go for the Throat is useless against control. They have virtually no threats that's worth really killing. I mean, the Sea Shark is obviously good target for it, but I mean, you're gonna be sitting there with like 3 removal spells, not being able to do anything with them.
So this
Ugh.
is for both of y'all. What are some crucial side deck cards here? I know we were talking about our wonderful, enormous Bat God, but outside of Alkalas, what are y'all thinking might be some critical sideboards here in this matchup? And Dana, we'll go with you first.
I think Outrageous Robbery and Siphon Insights might be some good cards to look for to side in, and Aquazots, which I see already went into the deck, because Outrageous Robbery and the Siphon Insight takes cards from the opponent's deck, but the opponent's deck is very similar, so the cards will generally do what they want.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think,
agree.
Kuro?
I agree, because if you're able to steal like some of the, for instance, make disappears or the removal spells that Dylan is playing, or you're able to even steal like a fairy mastermind or a deep cavern bat for yourself. All of those are completely viable options to deal with Dylan's strategy. Like it basically makes the mirror, except it's a Sphinx's Revelation for yourself. I also would make an argument that the extra fourth Path of Peril might be useful, just because it's so important to get rid of those deep cavern bats. And if you have only one Path of Peril in your hand at the start, well, you're going to be suffering because the bat takes it. So it's good to have the redundancy so you don't have to worry about one bat just ruining your entire strategy.
Ooh, we have the keep from Cora, a very spicy keep. How much of a risk do y'all think it is, given that there's the deduce in hand? Dana, would you keep a hand like this, knowing that you might be able to draw your way into that swamp?
I would definitely keep this hand because the deduce gives me not only one but two extra looks. And I think that's really key.
Yeah, and as you say that, there is a black source off the top here for Cora here, drawing into yet another, and I see, y'all can't see Kuro's joy there, but again, another black source here. So again, Cora's risk paying off, but that is a fairy mastermind flashed into play here. A very tricky play here, and a good one by Dylan to start off. So right now, how do y'all navigate through this minefield right now that is essentially Dimir on Esper here? What do y'all think it needs to be done here in order to sort through this field?
I
Oh,
think drawing in to a board wipe for Cora, um, because I think what Cora wants to be doing is to make sure the creatures remain off the board, because Cora can win the long game.
yes, I agree. Which is why I'm sort of iffy about playing the creature so early, because if Dylan still has Go for the Throats, this Siege Shark is going to be able to just get killed very easily, especially since Core doesn't have any other good targets for it, because
Oh,
Aquataz is.
look at that is a cryptic code. However, y'all were talking about the wipes, but we're going with alkalas here, or alkalots, excuse me, instead. And now, again, the field has gotten even messier. But again, as Dana was talking about before, it's kind of hard to get rid of our lovely Bat God here. So down the middle here with the sleeper and with the mysterious face down here. And we're going to see how this combat plays out right now, because again, we don't know what that face down card is. This is Morph all over again, right? So how would you assign blockers here, Dana? What are you thinking?
I think because the Vault Sleeper can get Death Touch, I think it's safe to not block and then attack with the Aquazots, getting the value off of it and seeing what you draw. Because having the Aquazots stick around is going to be maybe even more of an advantage than just wiping the board straight up and getting the removal spell like the Go for the Throat to deal with the Evolved Sleeper can be huge, and this Aquazots is gaining 4 life every turn, so it counteracts the 3 unblockable from the face down creature.
So yes, Aquazot's down the middle, -4, gain 4 here, kind of makes a big differential on this board. And that is Go for the Throat here on Evolved Sleeper, takes out the Evolved Sleeper here. At least on Dylan's side, there was no mana spent to commit to that. 3 down the board here, down to 8 for Cora, and that is Kaido, everybody's favorite 3-drop Dimir Planeswalker in Standard right now. And will it get scorned? Yeah, it will get scorned here. Let's see what's happening on Dylan's side. No counter to the counter spell here, as this board just became very strong here for Cora, and going to animate the incubator token here, the 3/3. And now we are going down the. Oh, no, there's no down the middle. There's a scoop here, and we are going to game number 3 here. What a game so far between both of these players. So now, what is going to be the crucial way in which one of these players is going to clinch? What do y'all think is going to be the X factor going into game 3?
Considering that Dylan is going first in this game, it really matters because
Mhm.
now Dylan, like the difference is being able to play Deep Cavern Bat before Cora can even land a second land. So Cora cannot use Out of Air to counterspell a creature. Cora has to wait an extra turn before casting Path of Peril. Cora has to wait an extra turn before casting Go for the Throat. So that mana differential is something that both players need to be extremely conscious of. And we saw in that last game how much it mattered. If Dylan had gone first in that game, it would have been completely different because Cora would not have been able to land it down that Chrome Host Seed Shark on that turn 3 when Dylan was tapped out. This is really important right now, especially. I'm going to continue to argue that the fourth Path of Peril, I think, is a really good choice here. And that maybe Deadly Cover Up isn't going to be quite as good because it just costs too much mana, especially on the back foot.
All right, we're going into game number 3. Now that's a hand. Now shout outs to Jim Davis here. Jim's hand of the week here, because I'm definitely getting some Jim's hand of the week vibes here. But the double cut down again, we're talking about ways of controlling the board. Maybe not so bad here, as we get a Chrome Host Seed Shark here off the top for Cora. So again, very interesting board state here heading into game number 2 here. What do you all make of this situation? And that is a duress. That is a duress from Dylan here. Again, if y'all are in Cora's shoes right now, what are y'all thinking right now needs to be done?
I think eventually drawing into Deduce and Memory Deluge can be good to find even more cards. I think the cut down keeps you stable for now. An interesting decision later is on turn 3 whether or not to cast the Sea Shark or hold up to bluff something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, with blue, anything is possible, right? And bluffing is a big part of playing blue here. So again, that is a Field of Ruin off the top. Very interesting.
This
And
Field
we
of
have the
Ruin looks very
go
good
ahead.
to check. It'll be good to check the reef that just came down on Dylan's side of the board. It's not a problem right now because it costs 4 to activate, but this Field of Ruin is going to be eventually useful.
Do we see the bitter triumph? No, we do not. So Fairy Mastermind down the middle here for 2. Let's see what comes up on Dylan's side here.
The Mastermind is definitely annoying, but it's not game ending right now. The Cryptic Coat, I think, is far more threatening. Cora not having a counterspell for it means that the coat is going to be able to get a lot of card advantage by just bouncing and making more creatures. And because Cora isn't actually playing a lot of blockers, Cora isn't playing an aggressive deck, Dylan's creatures not being able to block is not actually that much of a problem because Dylan's not blocking at all.
Wow, that is a go for the throat here. And again, there is one thing to consider here. Let's take a look at the land count right now at the end. That's it. Dylan is on 3 lands right now. And if you're Cora, you definitely need to be hanging on to that right now. Again, just because you need to get an advantage somehow. And land count could play a factor for Cora should they be able to survive here. All
I like
right,
that
so yeah.
Manland. It's hard. This position's difficult because the Chromo Sea Shark was not played in a turn where in the same turn to get that extra creature down, unfortunately. So the tempo is really in Dylan's favor right now. And because Dylan's curve is so low, having 3 lands is not as bad of a problem for Dylan as it is for Cora. Cora being on 3 lands means that Cora can't play the cover up, right? But Dylan being on 3 lands, all of Dylan's deck costs 3 or less. It's not an issue.
All right, so down the middle here for the face down. And again, word is a big factor right now. So, what is going to happen here? This is nerve wracking right now.
Dana, how do you feel about this Urtai Scorn right now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think, well, right now, I think that it's nice to be able to like check a lot of things.
mm-hmm.
And having a counterspell is always very helpful. If the Urtai Scorn was 1 turn earlier, the Cryptic Coat could have been countered, and I think that might have been a big difference between winning the game and not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting how like that coat coming down, and if the creature's killed, well, Dylan can just bounce it back and get another creature, and
So my question for both of you is the Urtai Scorn just too expensive of a card right now? Because I feel like, again, it's all about timing, right? Surely before going between first and second is one thing, but having a counter spell cost we'll say possibly 3. I mean, that's gonna be pretty tough sell here, and we're getting a go for the throat on the face down card. Here comes the ward payment right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because otherwise it could be a ton of damage. In fact, you needed to kill something, otherwise that's 4 unblockable damage.
Mm-hmm. So again, Dylan only on 3 mana right now. That is the thing Cora has going for her. So what needs to happen here for Cora to survive? That is duress. Oh my goodness.
The game is over. The game is over because the coat can be attached to the Fairy Mastermind, which is exactly 4 damage.
Yeah. And I think what Dylan was trying to do is make sure that there was nothing that was going to mess with that.
Yeah, like an errant cut down or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. Oh!
Okay. Down the middle here with the ninja. Cora survives the turn.
Oh, the critical can't actually be equipped to anything.
Oh, LOL. I'm so used to artifact.
It's such a weird equipment.
It is a very weird equipment. Yes, that is correct. I wanted to wait for y'all's reaction to that, but
sorry,
yeah.
we lied. Our bad. My bad.
It's okay. That happens.
Me when I'm wrong.
I mean, it's still not looking great for Cora.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, that's true. That's actually interesting. I need to remember that when I play against the coat the next time, because normally I don't kill it because I'm like, that just equip it to something else. But I guess that's not really the true, is it? Okay. Mental note for myself.
All right, that is a land off the top. Now, keep in mind that token can be animated here, so the land isn't entirely useless here. And Bitter Triumph can create potentially another creature here. Important note that happened from over the last turn, there was a Mirex, so Dylan now has 4 lands now. And Bitter Triumph now. This is tricky. Going for Gix, it looks like. That's going to create...
I think that makes the most sense, because Gix gets card advantage and can be more damage that the Crumhorse Sea Shark cannot straight up block and kill.
Yep, I agree. Killing Kaido is not a priority here. Killing the Fairy Mastermind is not a priority. The only other thing I would argue is better kill than Gix is the Restless Reef if it animates. But there's a field of room for...
Oh, Urtai! Off the top, that is the GG from Cora, drawing into the Celestius, and that is it! Dylan advances here, and oh my gosh, what a game by both players. That was a tricky minefield of Dimir, Esper, mishmash. Just, I believe those were both Dimir, actually. Dimir mishmash to navigate around. There were certain times where I'm looking at the board state going, okay, just about anything is possible here. And it's difficult to make all of those micro decisions there. So again, just incredible GG to both players. Do you have anything else you'd like to say about the match?
I think it was definitely rough when Cora got stuck on lands, and I think we definitely saw the difference between play and draw.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
The way that the resource management is absolutely essential to understand these matches. And when you have to decide between playing your Siege Shark or a Counterspell, or whether you're going to deduce or not, those are all extremely important decisions.
Well, I'm just looked at both decks. I'm sorry, I snuck a peek, Chad. I snuck a peek. We have a very interesting matchup coming up. There's a little bit of green involved, so I'm excited for Dana because there needs to be some green involved here as we take a look at our second round for tonight here on the VML. This is Aspi, and she is running Golgari Midrange. I believe you were talking about Golgari before, Kuro. And oh yeah, go ahead, Dana.
I love Golgari. It's the deck I qualified with. I've been on the deck all of the standard RCQ season. And I really like how the deck feels and how the card quality is.
Anything in particular that makes you want to play Golgari Midrange? Is there anything that gets you excited to play this deck, Dana?
It's one card and it's called Nissa.
All right. So, yes, we do have, and I didn't know how you felt about Nissa, but considering this isn't the Nissa a lot of Nissa fans like to see, and this is more of a Phyrexian influence of Nissa, right? Dana had very strong feelings about this. I saw on the internet when we found out about Nissa's story. But we also have Nissa Resurgent Animist as well too on the other side for the team, and we'll get into that in a second. So a lot of Nissa, there's Nissa on both sides. So of course, this is going to be a perfect match for a Nissa fan here. Kuro, what do you think in particular though about this Golgari mid range? What gives it such an edge right now in current standard? And Dana, you can feel free to chime in as well.
I mean, I feel like Dana is much more qualified to talk about this deck, considering it's her main, but I'll give it my 2 cents, I suppose. It does well with card advantage, the Deep Cavern Bat, the Preacher of the Schism, the Dreadnought that you can adventure to draw a card, and then you have all the best black removal. You have the best direct removal in the format with access to black, and you have some of the best beaters with access to green. Even the manland is extremely good. Your sideboard options are extremely nice, and you can deal with most archetypes. You have Duress for control, you have Path of Peril for aggro. You're just really versatile.
And Dana, anything else in particular you'd like to chime in since you have played this on a very competitive scale?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the cards in Golgari mid-range are super strong and solid on their own, but I think the card single-handedly that puts Golgari mid-range over the top is the Mosswood Dread Knight. It can just produce so much value over a long period of time because in those aggro matchups or the matchups where you want to be the aggressor, you can play a 2-mana 3/2 with trample. And not a lot of people know that has trample. I can catch some people sometimes. And then when it dies, you can draw a card and lose a life, which especially with Shieldred will gain you life. Although that is one thing I'm seeing. I don't think I see a Shieldred in this list.
Yeah, it looks not present. That's interesting. I guess the Preacher of the Schism is going to be the big card advantage sort of constant thing rather than Shieldred or something like that. Aklazotz as well.
So one last window into Aspi's perspective here before we go to her opponent. She says, look, IDK would beat Slogurk and control isn't the answer this time. Again, another fun part about the VML, the fact that we get to look at these wild names for these deck lists, right? So Aspi's opponent here, speaking of more green and more Nissa, we go into Six's deck, and they have chosen Temur Ramp here. So this is a wild choice that they've chosen, and I'm a big fan of it, frankly. We have Nissa Resurgent Animist here, and just in general, I'm not sure what to expect from this. I'm going to defer to the experts on this one. What do you all think of this deck?
Okay, so the previous iteration of this deck that we saw, as far as I'm aware, is the one that is 4-color, and it primarily uses the, oh my gosh, the name is escaping me. Slogurk is one, but I'm more talking about the elf, the one that you can sacrifice.
Aftermath Analyst. That's also in this deck. That's
it is.
a combo for this deck as well.
Yeah, it has the Aftermath Analyst. The key difference, though, is that this deck, instead of using black for board wipes and removal and such as that, it uses red for all the damage. Like, it uses it for the other board wipe. You can draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards. You can deal X damage to somebody and get even more lands back, so you don't even need Splendid Reclamation as much anymore. And you can kill someone, which is awesome. Killing people's great. So you have all these choices. You have access to a lot of other threats, and it has some of the same shell. Like it even added like a Shigeki, which is a throwback, right? We used to see like Shigeki Golgari, but now it's here. It's just a bunch of good stuff.
Wait. I want to interject just for a second here. Since when is Kamigawa Neon Dynasty considered a throwback? Oh my gosh, I just crumbled to dust here, Kuro.
Look.
Why?
Look, it's remember when we used to have remember when the combo was Shigeki with Colossal Sky Turtle, and that was the combo with Invoke Despair? Yeah, that's a throwback.
Shigeki and Sky Turtle, I believe, are in this deck. So
it's true. So we can. It's
another combo because with this deck, it's just trying to generate a bunch of mana with the Nissa. And so having the Shigeki Sky Turtle, you can keep recurring Sky Turtle and something else, which is another good side thing. And I overall really like this deck. As I mentioned, I was judging the past couple of weeks, and this deck won both of the RCQs I judged last weekend.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Well,
That's
I
good to
can't
know.
wait to see this in action. Just wow. All right, let's dive right into the matchup here because this is Nissa on Nissa here. Two different Nissas, one Phyrexian and one in the aftermath. So we're gonna see which chapter of Nissa will prevail here. So Aspi is going first likely here. We'll see. But very excited to see both of these decks clash here.
I think when playing against a combo deck like this, it's really important that you get as much advantage as you can, and going first is one of those things. If you let 6-5 go first, you don't have as much opportunity to get the lands to, say, kill those aftermath analysts, which you absolutely need to kill pretty much all the time, because if you let one sacrifice and let them get like 4 extra lands, that's basically 4 extra turns that they've managed to have, which is insane. And they gain 4 life, like it's just amazing.
So y'all were talking about how much value this card generated before. That is the Mosswood Dread Knight on turn 2, and there is Shigeki on turn 2. This is ramping up quickly here. Pardon the pun. I'm so sorry. That accidentally happens all the time here. Liliana the Veil causing Shigeki to get sacrificed. Mosswood down the line for 3. Very strong start so far with Aspi. Let's see how 6-5 responds here. And we're seeing so far, we have not seen the blue yet, even though it is in 6-5's hand. Land pass here. Down to Aspi's turn now. And what are you thinking here for this next turn? How do you keep the ball rolling if you're Aspi, Dana?
I think one thing that you want to be aware of is ill-timed explosion, because if you play Glissa or Tranquil Throwback, that might not necessarily live. But if you play out your second Dread Knight, when it dies, you can get more value with the Dread Knight, so you're kind of fine if it gets killed with the ill-timed explosion. Whereas Glissa is something that you want to live and want to make sure lives throughout the whole turns.
Yeah. Liliana +1 here. So again, we see a discarding of the land here. We see the discarding of the cut down from Aspi. Makes perfect sense here. Again, no creatures on the side of 6-5 right now. One key thing, there is not an additional land here, and land is going to be a very important factor here for both players. So again, Aspi, she's in the tank right now. Nothing wrong with being in the tank. And she's thinking, okay, well, what would possibly be a nice follow-up? Going for the Glissa, parks it down, in for 3, down to 14 for 6-5 here. And I think we are going to see that ill-timed explosion that Dana was referring to earlier.
I think what's really important as well is the Aspi needs to be very careful about what 6-5 has in their graveyard. Aspi has main deck Graveyard Hate. The Tranquil Fallback or Frillback rather, is extremely good here because it means that 6-5 will not be able to reanimate as many lands as they could have. But if Aspi doesn't hit that 4th land, that's going to be a big problem.
Yeah, and speaking of land here, so this is a very difficult position here for 6-5 here. Does discard the only other land in hand here, but does wipe the board, which is going to be key here for 6-5. Discarding a card again for Lilia the Veil. Discarding the Dread. Oh my, I didn't even think about that. That is fantastic for being able to play that in the future. Tranquil Frillback paying the 1 here. You always pay the 1, right? We've heard about that saying in Magic. Exiling the graveyard. And speaking of graveyard hate, we just see that here on behalf of Golgari as the archaeologist gets played here. What are y'all thinking of this sequence of events so far?
I think it's very interesting choosing to fire off the throwback now, because there wasn't a ton that was threatening in the graveyard, and the Dread Knight is your one-time use. But there could also be the sense to be made that you just want to make sure to keep the lands out of the graveyard, because anything can happen in a single turn.
Absolutely. And also, it is true that 6-5 only had like 2 lands in the graveyard, but if those lands are allowed to basically get an exponential increase, it's just over for the game, because then Memory Deluge is extremely easy to cast. You can combo off into your other things. You could get your Nissa. You could start ramping into more damage, and once that happens, there's not much you can do. Like 6-5 is at a loss. They have 2 Blazes. That's what they have in their hand. Like, it's unfortunate. There isn't that much going on.
Now, for folks who don't know, what do you mean by blazes in hand? Just
Oh,
for those
yeah.
of us who might not know that, I just want to make sure that folks watching might know what that means.
No, you're absolutely correct. That's my bad. Blaze is
You're
a
good.
common from like way back in the day. Is literally X red, deal X damage to target creature or player, or rather to any target. Warlord's Rage is basically that, except it adds a green to allow you to get back lands. So it's pretty much the same idea. It's just there's an extra upside. So because there are no lands in the graveyard, the Warlord's Rage is only the damage, which is not the reason why Sixes plays the card. Like that, I mean, it's a reason. It's a closer, but it's not the primary reason because getting those lands back is extremely valuable.
Well, speaking of lands here, Six Fists is down to 8 now. Aspi has a clear control over the board state right now, and that is going to be a scoop from Six Fists. Good game. My goodness, that could have gone in any direction, but that graveyard control just played a major factor in this game. And most
Yeah.
people don't think about standard right now. Yeah, Dana, go on.
Especially like as soon as the graveyard gets exiled with the throwbacks, and then you have the Restless Cottage. What Six Fists wants to try to do is keep on playing the Capenna sacrifice lands. But with the Restless Cottage, every turn it just becomes animated and will exile those lands. And then that's just control over the graveyard forever.
This match was made for you, Dana. There goes the Nissas into the deck here. So we're going to get to see some Nissa v Nissa potentially. Dana is excited, by the way. Y'all can't see her right now. Yeah.
I love Nissa so much that originally in my Golgari list, I had 2 in the main deck. And then my dad convinced me to do 1 in the main, 1 in the side.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, just this deck is full of heavy hitters, right? I mean, there's just so many. You were talking about this before, Dana. This is why you selected this deck. There's just too many all-stars in this deck, right? Lily of the Veil, though, as commanding as Lily of the Veil is, we see it being removed from Aspi's deck. I assume that is just something that you're going to do if you're on the draw because it's less easy to take control of the game, I assume, Kuro.
That as well as Lily lets the opponent discard cards, which in Aspi's case, that's not what they want to have Six Fists do. What Aspi really wants to do is to just take control over the game. And Lily's not gonna do a ton by making them sack creatures. And when Six Fists just discards the Capenna lands, then it's just kind of meh because they're just getting Six Fists closer to the goal that they want.
Exactly. Being able,
I like how you call them the Capenna lands. I feel like that communicates a lot about because there are so many sets out right now, right? And that's a great way to call out. Kara, what were you going to say as we begin game number 2 here? I want to make sure we include your point.
Oh, well, I'm just agreeing with Dana. Dana is absolutely correct. Being able to get those lands in the graveyard for free without having to sacrifice them, without having to worry about doing any extra effort, actually helps Six Fists. It's sort of like playing against Dredge, playing against any graveyard strategy, really. When you play Lily and you plus, they're just like, wow, I've been wanting to discard these lands that I have, but I have had no way to do it. So thank you, opponent. And then Aspi has to discard like a removal spell or a threat or something, and you're just sitting there and you're like, you know, the discard's hurting me more than it is my opponent. I'm just gonna not do that anymore. I'll just play duress. Make sure the discard only hurts my opponent.
I mean, feel like Thoughtseize or Thoughtseize here. Oh, going for the hearse here. Aspie saying, you ain't doing any of those graveyard shenanigans here. So we're about to see that Six Fists will have all 3 colors present of Temur here as that mountain will eventually go down. We have Archaeologist doing the mill here. I'm later to see the graveyard here, so bear with us here. But I mean, what graveyard, right? The hearse is going to take everything anyway, so we'll get a better look of it later on. So, all right, that's a lot of lands in the graveyard. We were talking about Capenna lands before. And going to exile down the middle for Shigeki for 1. And now we head into Aspi's turn. And Dana, what would you play in this situation? Not knowing what Six Fists has in their hand, what are you doing here on turn number 3?
I think what I want to try to be doing is prevent Six Fists from being able to get the combo online. So I would start off with firing off the duress to just make sure that there's nothing that the bat will die at instant speed. And then once you see what the hand is and take a non-creature if there are any, then you can bat and know that the bat will generally be pretty safe from removal.
Yep, going after the Nissa. One of these is not the same. Definitely going after the Nissa. Key here in that hand, as that is an island off the top here for Six Fist. Going to use Shigeki. Shigeki's ability firing off here. Let's see what we have. Lands in an archaeologist.
I have a hard time seeing how Six Fist wins with this hearse online. Like, Six Fist has not drawn any removal of any type to get this artifact off the board. I don't even see any in their graveyard that they might have milled. It just feels like this hearse is just going to make sure that no lands will ever be in the graveyard at all, which makes those analysts quite terrible right now. And Aspi's just going to be able to get threats down without worrying about anything. I think this is really rough, actually. Like, this hearse is single-handedly ruining Six Fist's entire strategy.
It definitely is. It's definitely really hurtful. Obviously, the Temur ramp deck is a ramp deck, and having the Sky Turtles definitely can be a threat. But I think the issue is with that is that Golgari just has so many more and better threats than the Sky Turtle.
The game one was probably the game that was Six Fist was most favored in my opinion. But after the sideboard comes in and all the hearses come in and there's main deck graveyard hate in Aspi's deck too, like it goes from what I think is best described as a 40-60 to maybe like a 30-70 or even like a 20-80. I think it's going to be really hard for Six Fist to get back from this.
But I do see a big dinosaur. And as someone who's a fan of big dinosaurs, anything is possible with big dinos on the field. So Six Fist here just getting ready to cast that dino. And Hearse going to do its job again.
I agree. Big dinos are best.
It's
Big
true.
fan.
Well, second best to Nissa.
That's
But
fair.
yeah, that is an Archfiend of the Dross there on the field there. Again, choosing not to animate it because, again, you don't want to put that in danger. And that is another dino of sorts off the top here. And what is Tranquil Frillback going to do this time? It is going to exile the graveyard. Again, just graveyard removal just being a big component here. And we will see the hearse animated this time and down the middle for a considerable amount of damage.
There's a really interesting argument to be made that Archfiend of the Dross could actually lose Aspi the game if Six Fist were to gain enough life that they could get away with that. But I don't think that Six Fist is in a position right now where that's possible. In another world, perhaps, in another universe.
All right, that is a Broker's Hideout. I'm going to start referring to those as Capenna lands. That is brilliant. Our Broker's Hideout on the board here. And again, Rex cannot be cast quite yet here. Both 1/3s contemplating. That still is a lot of damage for Six Fist right now. And as you were saying there, Kuro, the most likely win condition for Six Fist right now is that Archfiend, believe it or not. So, yeah. You always get nervous when casting that card. When I say you, I mean everyone, right? Because anything that says you lose the game on it, like that's got to be terrifying to play. But that is a deep cavern bat off the top. And my goodness, we cannot get away from the bats, but going with the Glissa here. So again, maybe thinking about, okay, I better start attacking, and goes in with the board that can attack. Let's see the blocks. Analyst.
I definitely like this play because thinking about the only way the Aspi loses this game is to the Archfiend. So what you're trying to do is just be as aggressive as possible, and the bat does not do that for you. The bat is a great card, but it's not the most aggressive. That goes to Glissa and the Archfiend and those types of cards.
And here comes the dino, but it looks like it's going to be too little too late here. Because again, that Archfiend flies, right? There's 2 damage left. And Six Fist says, good game. And wow, that Golgari deck just seized control of the yards and just dominated that game. Six Fist did everything they could. But in the end, Golgari Midrange, who would have thunk it? We're in the top 32 right now, has asserted itself. And Aspi proceeds into the top 16. What a match again. GG to both players. Any final remarks on this match before we proceed to the next one?
I think it was very interesting that Aspi had main decked a Tar Hate. And I think as a concept, the Temur ramp deck is so hard to beat. But I think with enough graveyard hate, which green has the best access to, I think it's incredibly tough to beat the Temur ramp deck without green in your deck. Unless you have the hearses. But Tranquil Throwback is such a clean, easy way to deal with the graveyard that a lot of decks don't have access to, especially not main board.
Absolutely.
So, would you consider, now we were talking about this in the pre-show, only reason why I'm going to ask this, would you consider that there was someone who got VML'd here because there was main board graveyard removal?
I think 3 throwbacks for sure. I think there have been a lot of decks running at least one throwback main. I have a friend who was on 2 main. My current list has 1 in the main. But I think the 3 main really just gives you a much better shot at being able to see one of the throwbacks game 1. And I think otherwise that matchup can be extremely hard to win unless you have a ton of bats and other hand disruption.
Well, from what I've learned from y'all, especially from you, Dana, just the bats are supreme, especially on turn 2. Just put your trust in the bats. We are going on to game number 3 here. And again, unfortunately, I do believe we are going to leave Greenland, so to speak. Not as much green in standard as there normally would be. And let me see what the actual matchup's going to be.
What do you mean Iceland? Because Iceland is where all the green stuff is.
Ah, you got me. I knew you were going to catch me on that. But all right. We have violence.
Yeah.
You keep doing this, I will mute you.
Sorry, Phoebe. Phoebe's having some fun with us here in the booth. By the way, big shout outs to Phoebe and Tech. All right, we are going to game number 3 here in our awesome top 32 here. And this is Violet Starmine. So again, and she provides very, very, very inspirational talk here. How does it feel to make the top 32? And she says, feels really sweet to make the reverse sweep 0-2 to the playoffs. I just want to say bravo. It is so hard to get bogged down in an 0-2. And just the perseverance here that's come from Violet. I just want to applaud you. We don't do that enough here in Magic to think about the comebacks, but amazing comeback here, and good luck in this match, Violet. So we have Azorius control here. I should have seen you were playing first, Violet. Just kidding. We love you. So we have Azorius control here, favorite of Kuro's here, and we were talking about several of these cards. Now I don't see any farewells per se here. Let me just take a look here. Kuro, you're the big expert here in Azorius. What are your feelings about this deck in the current standard meta?
Well, you see, Blue-White Control has the best. It has really, really fantastic removal. March is extremely versatile. Sunfall basically kills everything. And it has the best card draw. It has Memory Deluge, and Deduce is pretty good too. We even have Mana Leak in the form of No More Lies. My favorite counterspell of the format right now. I was happy when it was spoiled, and I'm still happy now. We have a really fantastic shell here. It's really interesting looking at these control decks. Anyone who's new to these looks at them and says, how do you win when you only see, Restless Anchorage and Wandering Emperor and 1 Chrome Host Seed Shark? And that is how you win. You win through inevitability. They're a really versatile sideboard. Most notably, the temporary lockdowns are in the sideboard. They used to be in the main deck, as far as I'm aware, because aggro was such a problem. But now that it's sort of been phased out, now that everything's about blue-black control, blue-black tempo, it seems to me that those in the sideboard is probably more appropriate because you're not losing as much to the aggro decks. But I still think that we're going to see them in play a few times. I'm excited.
Dana, any thoughts about this deck? I wish I could describe the look on your face here to the audience. Dana's just like, no, not control. Dana, any thoughts about this?
Over it.
I've never played control. I don't honestly know a ton about the deck. I try to avoid it as much as I possibly can. But that's just a personal preference.
Sure,
I think one of the counter spells to note is Disruption Protocol. Disruption Protocol with Deduce and get lost sometimes in the Chrome host seed shark with the incubation tokens and the restless anchorage to make the maps. I think the disruption protocol, while it may seem it might sometimes be a 3-mana counterspell, if you can go on turn 2 deduce and then be able to play a tap land and then hold up either sacrificing the clue or disruption protocol by tapping the clue token, it can feel really, really good. And I think that's another additional counter spell that can really help this deck function.
Absolutely.
And I'll add one more thing too that we were talking about: a Sunken Citadel, a card that it's very underrated, right? Like we see it every now and then. So again, activate abilities of land sources here. You best be watching out for those restless anchorages. They're really deadly. We don't think anything of them, but certainly something to be terrified of in a control matchup. Her opponent, we have Ra here, and they, oh my gosh, again, now on the other side, we have a 7-0 in the upper part of the in the Swiss rounds here. So again, big congratulations to them. That's quite an accomplishment, very difficult to do in the VML. We have Esper Midrange here, and of course we have Rafine, the absolute dominating force of Esper midrange here. So again, we are going to be seeing a more control deck versus a more mid-range deck. So Dana, we'll start with you this time. We have your 4 bats here. We were talking about the bats before.
Yes.
What does an ideal hand look like? If you're Esper midrange and you're going first, what do you want to just slam down on that field right away to get rid
on
of
the
these
play?
rolls?
A turn 2 bat can be one of the most easiest ways to win a game because it's uncounterable. And then what the control player never wants is for their opponent to have information about what's in their hand. A control player wants to always keep the options open that they could have anything. But after doing a bat on turn 2, there's so much in the hand that's known. So then you could run out something you don't care about, but they still will care about to get no more lies. You can play around the removal. You can play around their sweepers. So I think talking about the bat again, I think the bat is one of the key things, and especially if you can follow it up with a Rafine.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I would say now, Kara, you're playing control. Are there any cards here where you're just like, oh my gosh, that better not be played right on curve? The one that sticks out to me individually is Wedding Announcement, but what is your opinion about that?
Yeah, the bat is obviously just the biggest thing. It's probably the best card against control. Knowing their hand is extremely crucial because control usually wins by resource management, effective resource management, and bluffing well. If you can bluff that you have a counterspell, your opponent will play a lot more cautiously, even if you don't have one. But the Deep Cavern Bat takes that away and allows the player to plan around control's hand very effectively and efficiently. So you don't have to worry about the stuff that they have. If they have 4 counterspells, just land 2 creatures and then just bash face. What are they gonna do? Kill it? LOL? No, they're not. Land a Wedding Announcement. Be really conscious about how much mana they have to spend. I think Wedding Announcement is very powerful here as well. Basically, being here, have 3 tutus and everything is big. And control's forced to either use a board wipe on your tokens, which is a 1-for-1, or they have to counterspell your announcement on time, which is unlikely, or well, they don't have farewell, so 1-for-1 removal of the tokens, that's also bad. So there's just a lot of really good value here. Wandering Emperor is good value. Rafine allows you to sift through your removal that's useless, so that's also pretty much every permanent here is a threat.
All right. Well, again, this is going to be a very intense and what will likely be just a battle of the minds here between these two decks. So again, we head down to the match. And it looks like Ra will be going first. So let's see what Violet's opening hand will look like. That's difficult, right? Because there's a lot going on here. Do y'all keep or pitch here?
Oh, always keep it. You have 4 lands, you have removal, and you have Memory Deluge. You don't need to. There's really no debate whatsoever.
Live early. And as soon as you fire off your first Memory Deluge, you're generally pretty good to go.
Yeah, especially since a Deep Cavern Bat coming down turn 2 is so threatening that if you have the Get Lost, you're forcing your opponent to choose between the Get Lost or something else. But if they choose something else, well, the Get Lost is just going to kill it anyway. Ooh.
Oh, and there's the no more lies run after the fact here. And if you're a control player, you just go darn kind of here. But that is a get lost still that can deal with the Rafine here. So in a circumstance like this, Kuro, do you play the get lost and control the board? And it looks like that is what Violet is opting to do.
I don't know if I would kill it this fast because now you're opening yourself up to a wedding announcement. Because No More Lies is going to be not as useful the longer the game goes. Oh, a second Rafine is not the biggest threat ever, I guess. There's Depopulate, which is kind of not great. I would have probably kept up the No More Lies, let them loot one. Like, a 2-5 attacking when you have a Get Lost in your hand is not actually the worst threat ever. And you definitely want to be careful about other things. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. A bold play on Violet's part.
Yeah, and again, that was a little bit of a card disadvantage and advantage in the favor of Ra there, because again, now Violet knows that there's a Wandering Emperor in the hand. And speaking of knowledge, y'all were talking about how important knowledge is against control. That is a deep cavern bat here, and again, that is the card Dana especially wanted to see against control. We're gonna see how much that has an impact on the match, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna Starfall, you're gonna wipe the board to get the memory back. And that is a virtue of loyalty, which can serve as a soft clock on the game here. Heading back over to Violet's turn, what are you thinking here, Kuro?
I really like the use. I really like the idea of Sun falling here, just because that memory deluge is so important to get back. And Ra knows that Violet has Sunfall, so there's really no point in holding it because Ra's not going to get baited into playing more creatures. Ra's going to untap, play the virtue. But something else notable also, like in terms of resource management, Ra has one white source. That's because it means that Ra cannot cast Virtue of Loyalty. Ra cannot cast Warring Emperor. So all of these things that would normally be big threats against Violet right now are actually really, really not coming down.
And Ra lands one of the cards that Control does flat out not want to deal with, and that is Shieldred the Apocalypse. That is a very scary card to not have an answer for when you're playing Control. So again, this is a very dominant board state right now for them, and they go down the middle with Shieldred. We're going to see the Incubator get animated here, most likely going to block here. Let's see what happens. And yes,
I don't know how I feel about the blocker here because you really need to get that memory deluge to go off. And using Deduce right now is not good. I guess you're playing around the other No More Lies, though. If you're unsure about if Ra has a No More Lies, you want to be careful with that. And I guess you're conserving your life total so you can draw extra cards. Yeah, I don't hate this, actually. I don't know. Talking it's hard because you really want to pop off the memory deluge. It's extremely tempting to do so because if you can get that off, well, it's not card draw, so you don't get by Shieldred. And Shieldred itself is actually not. It is a clock, but it's not the best threat in Ra's deck because it doesn't give card advantage at all. So if you got a removal spell, Shieldred is just a sitting duck. If you draw a Wandering Emperor, Shieldred is not a problem. So there's a lot of answers that Violet could theoretically have for the Shieldred. It's really more of the fact that it's just a matter of time.
now, again, we're talking about land earlier. So one of the things I've noticed about the current board state is Ra only does have 4 lands right now. Is there any way, and this is to both of you, is there any way that Violet can capitalize on that? And that is another deep cavern bat here. Feel free to go ahead and answer that, even without that knowledge.
I think that, especially with this deep cavern bottomless stack, I think Violet just wants to try and get a board wipe, a nice reset button, because with only 4 lands, it's going to be extremely difficult for Ra to rebuild off of that.
And that is a go for the throat here, and I think this will likely draw Violet's Deduce here. And again, the knowledge is complete here for Ra right now. So again, going into the tank, this is, find a wipe or perish here. And okay, March of Otherworldly Light, not too bad here. I mean, it's not the number 1 card you want to see if you're Violet, but that is an answer of sorts here. This is going to be a hard down the middle here by Shieldred. So that's going to be 5 plus an additional 2 more damage for the card that Violet will draw here. And no, I stand corrected. That is an instant. March is going to take out Shieldred. And this will leave Violet to be able to preserve some life here. Good call here by Violet.
Yeah, I really don't hate this at this moment because taking that extra 2 could be the difference between a win and a loss, depending on when that Wandering Emperor comes down. Oh my, that is a draw of all
So
time.
what
So
were
good.
you talking about with a
Yeah.
loss here? That is get lost here
Get
off
lost.
the top for Violet. And Kuro is popping off here right now. And again, Ross still is only on 4 lands right now, which is very difficult here. Get lost for the Sewer King. And looks like the bat's likely going to come down the middle here for 1. But again, still a sizable. Might be for 2. Nope, it is just for 1. That is a land off the top, though. And will Ra go again for second breakfast? Yes, absolutely they will. And that is a Denick on the top here. Let's see what Ra's thinking here with the Denick. Denick goes to the yard.
I like
And bat down the middle for 2. Violet down to 5. That is an Algonjo off the top. Another spicy draw here for Violet.
Algonjo.
So
Oh my God.
again, I mean, this is very give or take here. And again, control is not dead until it's out of life, right? So here comes the Deep Cavern Bat, and Elganjo here can't even Wandering Emperor the way out of this. This is going to deal 4 damage, can't counter, can't Wandering Emperor out of it right now. Let's see if there's any tricks up their sleeve right now.
I think it's really, really important to mention how just vital that this like Iganjo is, because getting that normalized back means that the Wandering Emperor cannot be safely cast. It also means Denick cannot be safely cast. It also means that Violet is less pressure being put on her. Really, really important. She has these clue tokens, so she doesn't have to worry about being counter magicked. Ra doesn't have a flash creature because there's no mana for Wandering Emperor. Violet is now in a commanding position, having more mana, having more cards, having that 2/2, so can block the token. Oh, okay. Or just casually drawing a second Memory Deluge because, that's great.
Those lands are adding up. And again, we've been talking about the land ratio throughout the entire thing here. And again, Control's life. I mean, you all can correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like Control's life force that creates more things that it can do. So again, I know the score here is 25-5, but that score doesn't mean anything right now until the last life is gone here. So we're going to get an animate on the incubator to trade with the Vigilant Knight token going down the middle. Now we know that Wandering Emperor's there. They also know about No More Lies, and now that is a bitter triumph. Oh, this is hard.
That removal is super
And
okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with that because the Anchorage can now
mhm.
block completely safely. There's no worry about removal. I guess Ra would have to have 2 get cut downs specifically, but if Ra had a cut down, they would have used it already on the token. So we know that Ra doesn't have cut downs, which means that it's safe to block with the Anchorage.
All right, so the Anchorage is blocked. That is another march again. As a reminder, that is an instant. So now it feels like the tide might be turning here. Dana, where would you place the advantage bar right now in this match?
I think Violet definitely has the advantage with being able to swing with the rest Anchorage, as well as being up the No More Liars for this Wandering Emperor Virtue. But if those don't get cast, you can just fire off this Memory Deluge. And even if that Wandering Emperor lands for a turn, the Memory Deluge likely finds something to deal with it. And the Anchorage can just swing in to kill it.
Ooh, from the graveyard. That is Denick. Pious apparition here. Kuro's smiling and nodding, like going, yeah. I'm sorry. I love capturing your reactions. Go ahead.
Sometimes Denick, Denick's pretty good. Also dies to March for 2, which is a little unfortunate because with 4 mana was spent to cast it. So the answer is 3 mana to a 4 mana threat, and that's just a little example of just why resource management is so important in this matchup. Because now Violet's going to untap, go look at that and say, how much does that cost? Oh, that costs 2. What can I do with that?
Now, both of y'all have been talking up No More Lies. We just saw why No More Lies is so powerful. And again, it doesn't go to the graveyard. The spell gets exiled. And that is big when it comes to spells such as Memory Deluge here. So again, another land down. Again, just the real estate. Huge for control right now, right? So 2 unknowns right now for Violet and only 1 known right now for Violet. Because again, knowledge is everything in this battle, right? So now on the middle for Denick, looks like March.
Yeah, March to get rid of this Denick, holds up the No More Lies for the Wandering Emperor Virtue, and then probably Deluge and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's still dangerous to do. Oh,
Oh, that's pretty spicy actually here. So now does the No More Lies come down? Do you save it for the Wandering Emperor?
there's no reason to save it for the Emperor. Ra has 7 lands, so they can pay the 3. I would be tempted to count this just so that Ra is tempted to play the other virtue at a later point, because right now, Virtue of Loyalty does absolutely nothing. There is no board state on Ra's.
Oh, that is
That is
some
a
choice.
that is a good deluge.
That's a very good deluge. That's a good way of putting it too, Dana. That's definitely something you want to see if you are in Violet's shoes here. So again, we're talking about control being you just want to whittle down your opponent. It's not a matter of doing full damage. It's about the inevitability, right? And that's what Kuro was talking about before the start of this anchorage on the attack here. Here comes the bird.
Burb,
Do we have cut down?
Burb is here, and it's dead.
No, Bitter Triumph instead here. So
Dang.
yeah, that one's gonna be a little more difficult here. We get the mana caster, and looks like we're gonna still turn this into a positive here with Dadus. So again, not a total waste here.
It's fine. I mean, even though the land is lost, Ra has no threats other than the Wandering Emperor. So Violet is in an extremely commanding position right now. There's no worry. There's no reason. If I'm Violet here, I would not be worried at all. Violet has 2 removal spells. Okay, Zdenek is like, okay, like, sure.
Yeah, their worldly light's still sitting there saying hi right now.
There's a memory delusion in the back burner. Wow. So you can even let this Virtue of Loyalty resolve, and I think in this position specifically, it's not even a problem.
No.
Like, you can let it sit, let it ride,
Ooh, Wandering Emperor emerges onto the battlefield.
And this is the start of Control closing out the game. Denik is probably getting exiled here, and then the Wandering Emperor is like plus.
So we don't know how relevant it is right now. Probably going to see this go to the graveyard. Yeah, just because, again, you can pay the No More Lives toll, right? Like, it seems like you get to a point where, okay, so Violet says, no, I want that. And are we going to see a swing here? We sure as heck are here from the 4/4 and now down to 11 for Ra. And are we just going to see a go here? I mean, everything can be done at instant speed. What do y'all think here? You just kind of let it ride now if you're Violet?
Yeah, and another thing to note is the March of Otherworldly Light does deal with the Virtue of Loyalty.
Absolutely.
So you can be so you're countering this Wandering Emperor, trying to, but then you can march the Virtue and then have to make it the blocks very not profitable for the Wandering Emperor.
Wow. And that's going to be it for game number 1. What a wild turnaround here as Violet takes down game number 1 with control and Kuro the whole time. That seemed like textbook. If you are executing control to its fullest, that's the way it's going to go. But again, Ra put up a heck of a fight there too. What do you think in here are going to be the keys to winning game number 2 if you're Ra?
Putting in the, let's see, what is the flanker, dude? You exile graveyard, you put a counter thing. I don't hate that. I think the control deck is actually already really well situated against the tempo deck. They have a lot of good tools. They have a lot of answers. Being on the draw is going to suck a little bit, but the Esper deck isn't getting really important threats down until turn 3. I think really playing it well and having well resource management, like using not that useful, and then which then further allows the removal in your hand to be used at a later time. So you can save your resources to your maximalist extent. I like getting rid of Disruption Protocol because that's not coming down until turn 3 or after, and you never know how useful it's going to be. I'd be tempted to play the Depopulate just to get rid of Shieldrids, KB, Smite, not that useful, Lockdown, not that useful. Yeah, I don't know. I think right now it's good where it is.
Dana, you're at a GP. How do you deal with control if you're playing any kind of mid-range deck?
I think the biggest thing is just to be the aggro. Like, what mid-range can do, which makes it really strong, is it can either play the role of being the aggro deck and just firing off a lot of threats early on, or later in the game, Or if you're against those other aggro decks, you can turn into the control where you're killing everything and you're just trying to stay alive because you win the long game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, Dana, you have had your fair share of probably going through control decks. Again, we've had wonderful conversations before we started here. And I'm sure, again, if y'all give Dana a follow, we'll plug those social medias one more time before we're done with the cast. Dana can let you know her feelings about control exactly. Let's get back into the action here, though. We're at game number 2, a Violet up 1 game. We have a Rafine, and it looks like we're going to see a March for the token here. Why? Because, connive is kind of a thing still right now that we're dealing with. So again, dealing with that Rafine threat early on here, and I see you look like you have a lot to say here, Kuro. Have at it. Go for it.
It's just the way these lands have sort of panned out is so awkward because Violet does not have a way to get that Memory Deluge on turn 4. That's really important. And not having the No More Lies on turn 2 to counter that Rafine is also really important. It's just those little things that are all sort of causing this sort of okay. I mean, the get lost is nice because you can kill the wedding announcement, so it's not the worst draw. But I would have definitely wanted to cast Memory Deluge on that turn.
Oh, and that is an Alkalos
Oh, God.
here. Rah. And again, Dana always talked about this card being an excellent here. Dana, I know, big smile on Dana's face.
Yeah.
Slam down.
Well,
Go ahead.
Aquazaz is just such a good card because it can be so hard to deal with. Now, I will say Blue-Eye Control is a lot better than other decks at dealing with the Aquazaz, like the Sunfall we just saw. But for a lot of those block-based removals, it's all go for the throat, destroy it, and then it can just come back.
Yeah.
I saw that devious smile from you, Kuro. You can't hide that from us. And that is double Sunfall. Oh my gosh. What is this? Do we have a No More Lies? Do we have a No More Lies for Raw? Show me potato salad. There it is. No More Lies. And that holds the board state together here for Raw. So, Dana, now you see the mana is closed up for control. What are you trying to do on this turn to try to solidify your board state as best as possible?
Ooh.
I think the biggest thing is attacking with this Rafine conniving, and then trying to get the virtue of loyalty out before it can get countered.
Mm-hmm.
Because Get Lost and March can deal with the virtue, but they can also deal with a lot of your other threats, such as the Rafine, and the Rafine's already on the board, so Counterspell won't deal with that.
What an interesting board state right now. And that doesn't even begin to cover it. Like, that is just the word that I could find right now. This board state is all sorts of twisted right now. That is a plaza, by the way, a plaza for Raw. And again, that can protect the Rafine. Maybe not from a board wipe, but it depends on the board wipe, right? So here we go here. It's probably going to go down the middle again. Here comes the conniving, and Dana again saying, that conniving is very important right now. It helps Raw get through their deck. So let's see what exactly Raw's going to do. Conniving on the token here to maybe make Rafine not look like as big of a target. But you have to be thinking Wandering Emperor here, right? Because it sure as heck ain't going to be Settle the Wreckage, right?
Nah, maybe we could just put Settle the Wreckage back in this format. No.
Please no.
What do you mean? Wrath to Exile is great. Wandering Emperor is close enough to Wrath to Exile that it actually does punish attacking like this. Ra has been drawing through their deck though, and I would be very surprised if Ra did not have a single way. Yep, that works.
Ooh, Protect the Negotiators here. Great card here for Ra. Puts another token down on the field, which again, board state is so hard to come by against this deck. So Ra's going to take it where they can take it. And that is a sizable amount of damage against control going down the middle, down to 10. Again, control's a little different with life, but still, you do lose magic if you go down to 0. Yeah, go ahead, Kuro.
Well, that's a discarded Virtue of Loyalty. I just want to point that out. How good is Ra's hand that Virtue of Loyalty is not necessary? Like, that's so
Scary.
Yeah, that is. It is. It does send a message for sure. Get Lost here on Rafine. Plaza cannot be activated here. Not enough mana. That is 2 more map tokens for Ra, and still a sizable field here, right? The coast is clear. We do have the 3/3 though in the incubator token here. Something Ra has to consider. Going to use the map token to possibly make the token bigger. That is a No More Lies on the top. So that, in a way, pardon the pun here, is going to force Violet's hand here, so to speak, because again, that's a pretty powerful card here early on. If you're Ra, what are you hoping the most to use that No More Lies on?
I'm thinking either a board wipe or a memory deluge, right? Or a wandering
Yeah.
emperor. Just things that allow Violet to get back into the game.
Exactly.
All right, so that's the incubator token.
Even a wandering emperor right now to give it a +1 would be devastating. Oh, I guess that didn't happen. That's fine.
Yeah, Ra's board state right now is looking little thinner than usual, you know. But if we're talking about lands being a important force here, Ra's doing well with lands versus Violet right now. So if you're Violet, probably going to be looking for some lands here. We're going to see what she draws here in a second. And that is another Wandering Emperor and not a land here. So this is a tough situation for Violet to be in. Kuro, if you're in the control seat right now and you only have 5 lands, what do you think is going to be the best case scenario here?
I feel like some of the sequencing has been a little bit greedy here, I think. And that I probably would have. There was a point earlier in the game where Deduce could have been cast. I didn't say anything because we were kind of already talking about something else. But there was open mana, and Violet went to her turn instead of casting Deduce. That could have been really important. I probably would have at some point main phased a Memory Deluge if I had the opportunity to, just to try to get that land. Maybe even Field of Ruin potentially. Like this Deduce is getting cast right now, which honestly I think is a little overdue. I know that Violet's playing around No More Lies, which is why the Memory Deluge isn't getting cast right now. But I think it really should have been cast at least like 2 or 3 turns ago. Unfortunately, that just didn't pan out.
Yeah, and again, Violet had the right idea there. She had the right idea. The only problem is when you don't draw into your lands and you're in the control seat, things get very difficult. Those lands become your life force more than your life itself in the game, more than the actual life total there. That is the board state for control. So that is GG for game number 2. We're heading into game number 3. Control going first, right? Like that's what control likes to see. If you're the mid-range player here, Dana, what are you thinking actions might need to be taken in terms of the sideboard here for Ra?
I don't have complete access to the sideboard, nor am I as familiar with Esper midrange, but I think that the main thing is being able to deal with wandering emperors, board wipes, lots of redundancy. I think those enchantments are really good. I think Sheoldred is a really good card in this matchup.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have Sheoldred here, but there's a few key cards here I think you might recognize here. We have the Tidebinder. The Tidebinder can shut it down, so that's a way to deal with walkers. We also have an Urtai here, which I believe could also, or Planeswalker.
And I think also like Liliana of the Veil is a very strong card. Obviously it's stronger on the play. Going turn 3 Lily on the play can just be such a game ender. Because just getting rid of controlled resources is how the mid-range player wins.
Yeah, and then also a way to deal with it, there is a disdainful stroke, 2 copies in Ra's sideboard as well. So here we go on to game number 3, and that's tricky. That is a tricky hand, but maybe I'm misreading it. Kuro, what are you thinking there in terms of keep, not keep there?
This is fine.
This is
So
fine.
Sunken test for any color. Field of Ruin can be sacrificed at any point. Actually, can be sacrificed right now because Sunken Citadel taps for 2. Oh, there you go. getting value instantly. So you get your second blue source. You got to march for 2 if you need it. Violet is already in a very commanding position on turn 2. Like this is great. Ra's cutting down lands. Honestly, I might have saved it for a Plaza of Heroes instead because Plaza is good to protect the Sheoldreds. I might have saved it for a land that taps for black maybe, but cutting that blue just in case can be really important.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm going to associate you with this card primarily because, again, you are absolutely right. This is one of the sung heroes of the format. We have Deep Cavern Bat here. What are you thinking, Dana? You see this hand open. What is your first instinct to grab?
I think when I see this hand, my first instinct is either the March or the Sunfall. I think taking a card that there's a duplicate of is just not where you want to be at for the bat. Obviously, if there was a Lost or a No More Lies, I would immediately take that, or Wandering Emperor. because anything that can easily be used to remove the bat wants to take. If there's no repercussions, I think taking the Sunfall is interesting. Because if Violet wants to use the March on the Deep Cavern Bat, I think Ra is generally okay with that. Because that just gets back the Sunfall. And Sunfall is a really easy card to play around because once the super's coming, you can hold stuff back in your hand.
And that was the key draw, believe it or not, there, because that will open up the Sunfall play for Violet again, the deserted beach in general here, because the Restless was going to, again, to use a pun here, kind of tie it down like an albatross almost. Okay, that one was a little reaching, but you know what I was getting at here. So Dunnick down the middle for 2. Again, Violet to 18, Ra up to 20, and are we going to see a deluge here? Are we going to see a No More Lies? Let's see.
I would have been really tempted to play it on my main phase, to be honest, just to get around that No More Lies and not have to worry about any counter spells. I'm mildly surprised that Violet waited until end of turn, but I guess it's to convince Ra not to play anything. But Violet has a Sunfall, so if Ra plays like a Shieldred and have 1 mana open, that's not actually a problem. So I'm just thinking about like main phase Mimic Delusion just to get past those lands, so you can ensure that you have card quality is really important. I'm surprised.
Yeah. Violet here being patient, no Adawara play, makes sense. Going into the second deluge, now we see the No More Lies. So again, still another deluge in the yard, March of Otherworldly Light off the top, and now again, lots of options here for Violet. Violet holding back on the Sunfall, which again is very becoming of control players, right? It's about holding back. And now, as Dana was talking here earlier, the March can actually take out the wedding announcement here. We saw that with the Virtue earlier. So again, a lot of folks don't think about taking out enchantments with March, but that is an option here for Ra. I believe the bigger threat is likely the wedding announcement. But do you let those tokens kind of come into play, or do you take out the wedding announcement right now, Dana?
I think if I'm gonna deal with the wedding announcement, I would do it now. Because waiting for the 3 tokens and then the wedding announcement flipping and then Sunfalling is the same thing as just dealing with the wedding announcement now. And that way you open yourself up for future turns doing other things.
Yep, and there it goes. So now we can assume that there's most likely no presence of No More Lies here in Ra's hand, although Ra could just say No More Lies and play it again, But okay, so that is a field off the top. And again, land draws aren't necessarily the worst thing right now. The only bad thing happening to Violet, quote unquote, bad is the 2 damage. But again, your lifeblood in this game isn't necessarily your life total here. So we see the Field of Ruin happening here from Violet again, just taking out a land, thinning out the deck. Kurt, do you agree with this play?
I think cutting the blue is much more important than cutting any other color. Ra's deck is primarily white and black. Ra has a lot of white and black lands, but Ra only has 2 blue lands. And so being able to make sure that Ra could theoretically see now Ra has 3 blue lands. So it's kind of like I would have definitely been maybe I would have wanted to kill the river just because you don't want to let them have too many counter spells. That's sort of
speaking of which, that is a No More Lies. I was like, no. We can do without that. So Violet putting the No More Lies on the yard here. Dunnick down the middle first for 2. Okay. And that's it. If we notice, Ra's lands have dried up quite a bit. We haven't seen a land drop from Ra in quite some time. So again, we're seeing those echoes of game number 1 again from the land situation, certainly. Let's see how Ra reacts. Maybe an Emperor. And there it is. Yep, there's Wandering Emperor. So let's see. Oh, yes, go ahead.
That No More Lies would have been so nice to have right now, but unfortunately Violet didn't take it. So I'm kind of just thinking like, was it worth it to bin it and then you ended up drawing a land? And when your opponent is stuck on 5 and has to play through No More Lies? I'm not really sure. I like taking the Memory Delusion sheet shark here, but this creature presence might be really difficult to push through right now.
Yes.
I will say one thing is that the Restless Anchorage can deal with the Wandering Emperor, and being a flyer, it's not blocked by the Samurai or Dunnick.
That's true.
All right, virtue of loyalty. So this is looking more and more like maybe Ra's trying to force the Sunfall here. Is aware of that. So plus is on the Denic here, gaining life, doing more damage here. Down to 7 here for Violet. Still 3 up for Ra, and that is a Wandering Emperor off the top. Violet saying, okay, I definitely want more lands. And now we have this board state. And where does Sunfall possibly enter the mode of thought here? Where do you go from here? And this is for both of you.
I would cast the Sunfall right now. That's 7 damage on the field. If the Sea Shark is removed, like and okay, in a world where the Sea Shark is killed by a removal spell and the Wandering Emperor is countered by No More Lives, Ra literally wins every time, and that's such a risk that it's much better to just play the Sunfall. If it gets countered, you can play Wandering Emperor, kill the Denic, then you're still alive because Ra only had 3 mana up. I'm This is a little bit risky, but it could pay off because cast if the Sea Shark lands, the Wandering Emperor's cast, that's a 4/4. So there are reasons why this is a fine play. It's risky because if this Emperor is countered, Violet has to do a lot more resource management after that.
Very interesting that Rod didn't have any sort of counterspell for the Wandering Emperor. I think that's a big read that Violet can pick up on. And maybe we'll feel safe to go for the Sunfall now. Because you'll be left with a bunch of the incubator tokens. First trying to take out the Wandering Emperor, and then being able to Sunfall and have yourself at a good reset for looking into the future.
So now we know potentially that there's no more lives are not present in Ra's hand, given the last mode of play there. So Sunfall resolves as a result of that, and it could have been paid for too there as well. So now we see the incubator token, and we're probably going to see a +1 here from Wandering Emperor. Keeping Planeswalker presence on the field is important. And there's still a get lost on the field. So again, Kuro talking about making sure you have all the lands available. This enough lands? Did that Otawara need to be played there? And the answer is yes. And how do you foresee that happening? Oh, that is Alkaloz here off the top. And feel free to answer that still.
Aclazotz. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
every mana matters, right? You want to play around No More Lives. You want to make sure you have mana to do everything. The difference between being able to activate this artifact or not. Aclazotz, I think it's totally fine to get losted. It turns into a land, but the land only flips if you can adhere to the requirement. This is me.
Although currently Raw is at the requirement to flip Aclazotz because it's any player with 1 or less cards in hand.
Yeah, that's fair. But then it's still tapped, right? Because if it's activated, it's still a tapped creature.
Yes.
So it can block, which is really rough.
And then the Wandering Emperor can just exile it after that.
Exactly.
That's true. Oh. Well, Ra needs to draw Farewell. Oh, wait, but Ra doesn't have copies of Farewell in their deck.
Well, not only that, it's a mid-range deck, right? So it's a little rare to see a card like Farewell there for sure. What big announcement down here, but that's going to be a tough ask right now to be able to block all of these huge tokens right now. Temple, the diet is activated.
Oh, a player. Wow. Okay. That's amazing. Yeah. No wonder that card sees so much. I'm just so used to exiling it that I don't even care what the other side does usually, so I forget sometimes. But that makes sense. Unfortunately, and this is that was me being a little tongue in cheek. The only thing Raw can use that would result in Raw winning this game at this point is a way to kill these tokens. But Raw doesn't have any tools for that, unfortunately, so that's not going to happen. And GG.
That was a very intense game. Definitely one of the best I've seen in that color scheme so far in standard, especially this season. So again, you never know if you're going to be ending up in a ramp matchup. You never know if you're going to be ending up in an aggro to aggro. I mean, just anything is possible with this standard being as extended as it is. And before we go into our last match, Dana, how do you pick a deck for current standard right now? It just seems like there's so many possibilities, and it's so easy to get overwhelmed by how many sets are in standard.
I think one of the biggest things with choosing a deck for standard is not only seeing what do you think is best, but also seeing if there's a bunch of decks that you feel are equally as good, what fits your play style best.
Mhm.
Because for me, if I was navigating that control matchup, there were probably several misplays that I would have made just because I'm not familiar with that deck type. But when we were watching the Golgari midrange match, I was able to play it a lot better because I'm more used to playing those big beater strategies. And while I had never really played a mid-range strategy, it wasn't that much different from what Elves was.
Absolutely. So, yeah, stuff to think about for sure. And as folks are entering the VML again, it is easy to feel overwhelmed. We will have testing teams involved too. The VML always takes care of folks within the league, and we have many, many wonderful resources. So, if you do want to play in the VML, please join us next season. So, let's go into our final match of the night, the final match of the top 32. We have Winnie here, and we are back in the green here as I see Dana excited again for green with Temur ramp. And Dana, why don't you start off the commentary for this deck? What do you like about it?
I mean, it looks pretty similar to a lot of the other lists. I think one interesting thing is that there are only 3 copies of Nissa Resurgent Animist in this list, which definitely is a little sketchy. I mean, she is legendary, but also she's one of the main win cons for the deck, just generating so much mana.
Yep.
And also, too, I want to say, who is your favorite planeswalker? We have Chandra, because I like when the creepy mannequin of her stares at me at my LGS. Winnie, I hope you submit maybe on the VML Discord a picture of that at some point. I know I would certainly like to see that. Any other thoughts?
I've seen many of those around in stores.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To my soul.
They're really cool. And Chandra's my second favorite planeswalker. So.
Oh, heck yeah. Kuro, any other thoughts here while we're on this deck? I know we've seen it before, but anything else you want to add?
I mean, it's your standard Temur ramp deck. I absolutely love it. I'm a huge fan of the big enchantment. I'm sorry, the name escapes me, but the one that allows you to it makes your lands tap for 3 times the amount. That's so funny that you just play it and you untap and you're like, yep, I have 20 mana. What are you gonna do about it, huh? What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah, and one thing that can get super funny is when you doppelgang and X is like 5, and then you have 6 copies of Virtue of Strength, and then each of your land taps for 3 to the power 6, and I don't know what that is in math.
That's a lot of math.
Time to break out the old calculator.
Yeah, I hope they'll let you use a calculator for that.
That's 700. That's 729 mana per land.
Yeah.
And their opponent is, and this has been a familiar phase within the playoffs here, is Piper. 6-1 here. How's it feel to make the top 32? I'm excited to play more Magic. You know what? I agree with that notion, Piper. That's awesome. We are back on Dimir mid-range again here. So now we finally we've seen both the Temur and the Dimir. Now we get to see them clash together. And I swear to goodness gracious, I will figure out eventually how to pronounce Akalot's name.
Akalazat?
I'm sorry, it looks like Alcatraz to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need a phonetic thing like on my dashboard next time because that bad god ain't going away anytime soon.
Well, it's pronounced exactly how it's spelled.
Exactly.
Okay. Aklazats, got it.
Yes.
And yeah, there's a lot of bats. there's a lot of bats going on here. So we have deep cavern bats again, and we have two copies of Aclazot's here. So one in the side, one in the main, and a couple Sheoldreds, Gixes. Overall, is there any advantage going into this? Are these decks both of equal strength?
I think that in game one, I think in most of the game ones, to be honest, the Temur ramp deck is generally going to be the one with the most advantage because there isn't a lot of mainboard graveyard hate.
Yes.
And I think the blue-black deck just will have such a hard time dealing with it because I think the only way is to just play enough bots that that it just becomes so hard to fire the combo off because you've run out of resources. But other than that, as soon as the resources start flowing, Piper will have a very difficult time to deal with the Temur ramp deck.
All right, well, we'll see what that timer holds for us as we're going into our final game of the night. Good luck to both of our opponents here. And it looks like Piper is going first, and this looks like a pretty good hand for Dimir mid. Meanwhile, we take a look at Winnie's hand right now, and we do see a Nissa. There we go, Nissa on the opener. Virtuous Strength at Through Math Analyst here. These look like two pretty formidable hands, although Winnie in the tank right now with the hand. What do you all think of the starting hands for both?
I think the hand is very interesting because you don't have any of the Capenna sacrifice lands, which is what makes your deck really function.
Oh.
There's one now.
There it is right now. Perfect.
You just have magical powers. You make it manifest. That's there she goes.
All right, Deep Cavern Bat again, another fan favorite here tonight. Deep Cavern Bat for Winnie's hand, and it looks like in the past we've seen Deep Cavern Bat take the Nissa. Is there a better choice here than the Nissa?
Analyst is an argument for all three of these, to be honest. I mean, no, not the Virtue. Virtue's too expensive. But Analyst there's an argument for it because Analyst is the thing that lets you ramp so much. Nissa without Analyst doesn't really do a lot. I mean, I guess you can get a Capenna land, a Penne Pasta land, and get another elf. But yeah, no. I guess I like the Nissa here.
Yeah, and an advantage of running only 3 Nissas instead of 4 is that will generally make the probability of you hitting an Aftermath Analyst over a Nissa even higher. And Aftermath Analyst is generally the card you want to hit off of the second Nissa trigger.
Yep, right. And y'all called it there. There goes the Aftermath Analyst. Seemed like a good sound argument for that. Looks like we're playing Forest off the top using the Virtue of Strength Sorcery and getting another Capenna. Now I can't unhear the pasta name. Thanks, y'all. Into the back into the hand here, and it looks like there's a lot of lands for Piper. Not sure if that's a good or bad thing right now, but it does allow the Sheoldred to be played as soon as possible. Cut down gets milled here for Piper, and down the middle, 3 damage total. Piper up to 21, Winnie to 17, and Nissa hits the field.
Well,
I said Nissa hits the field.
Yeah.
Go for the Throat is played on Nissa, and another open field here for Piper to have at it. The Bat and the Scout down the line, 14 for Winnie, 23 for Piper. And now that is a memory deluge. So what do you do here if you're Winnie to get back in the game?
I think what you really want to find is ill-timed explosion into getting something that costs 5 or more, like a Virtue, to be able to discard, to just clear the board here, because I think otherwise it's just going to be, this is already presenting 7 damage on the attack plus 2 more when you draw. And so I think the Sheoldred has to go, and ill-timed explosion deals with that the best because you can also deal with the 2 flyers, which will eventually also kill you.
Oh, but ill-timed explosion doesn't even do it because ill-timed explosion would kill Winnie with the draw.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
it needed to be the last turn.
Yes, it definitely needed to be. I just realized because of the way the math worked, I was like, oh.
Yeah, because
that is yeah.
And then discard 2 if you want to, and then the second part of that is a reflexive trigger.
Yeah, exactly. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, this is a rough position to be in. Memory Delusion is worth noting here for folks who don't know. It does get around Shieldred's activation, as we saw before. We don't see Shieldred's trigger going off there. So that's a big relief there for Winnie. But this is still a really rough position to be in. And there's the old timed explosion
There
that
it is.
Dana was talking about.
Yep.
That's so unfortunate.
Is
Yeah, I
this
think
enough,
it's
though?
too
I
little,
feel like,
like-
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, I think that the L-timed explosion is just too little, too late, and I think it's just about to be game.
I forgot that the rage can also get them from the hand. That's really important. I'll have to remember that.
All right,
Yeah.
and I do want to note there, it didn't look this way, folks. Piper was actually in a really tight position there. Should have Piper lost the board there because there was just too many lands for that deck. So again, that match was a lot closer than it had looked there. The board just needed to stabilize. So now we go into game number 2. What can be done on both sides?
I think for the Temur deck, just getting the more rule for the bats. I like the Vampire's Vengeance quite a bit. It's instant
Mhm.
speed. It hits really hard. Gives you a blood token, so you can discard a land. It's super nice. For Dimir, getting the make disappears is really nice. Having cut downs is just kind of free because they Dimir always wants aftermath analyst. Tishana's Tidebinder, there's an argument to be made that that's also a great choice because the analyst trigger is an activated ability. And so
And
countering
so
that,
with the Nissa trigger, the Nissa trigger can just get shut off forever.
Yeah.
exactly. And if you prevent them from going from 3 to 4 mana, like it's over. Oh, the Capenna lands are also in a triggered ability.
Yes, they are actually. That's a good
So
point.
you can stifle a fetch land basically, which is done in Modern. Why can't it be done in Pioneer?
Just do it in standard, stifle your fetch land.
I'm gonna start to see
And
these formats blend together, like we're just seeing so many similarities now between the more eternal formats and standard. And as someone who's played like the more traditional standard right now, by the way, I've done that the whole time where it's like, I don't know whether or not to cancel there. It's arena doing arena things. Winnie here though. We're going to see if Winnie would like to go on play draw here. And it looks like we're going to see the courtyard first from Winnie. And now I'm going to be thinking about what happens when you stifle a land like that. That's ridiculous. And I hadn't thought about that, but that's conniving and I love it all at the same time. Confina land here, Cavalry Courtyard entering the fray here, gaining a life, getting a forest down to the field. Piper's turn. And we do see our duress in the opener, but we're not going to see it on turn 1. Piper plays a tap land. And now we're going to see Virtue for the courtyard again. And again, this is a nice way to fix mana, right? I hadn't even thought about using that for that, but yeah, that works out nicely. Getting the red source out. And again, y'all were talking about removal before. There it is. And that is a bat now that we see from Piper. And again, even if the bat gets destroyed, knowledge is everything, right? So what do you all feel like the steps that Winnie needs to take to make sure that combo gets on board?
Lazav? What?
well, for Lazav, I actually like Lazav here because
Yeah.
Lazav can exit. Lazav exiles any card. So if this land stays in the graveyard, Lazav will exile it on attack.
This is
All
fair.
right. Splunking. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a graveyard hate. Yeah, getting that out, getting an attack with that, and then the turn after, having 3 lands, there's another Darkslick Shore, so Duress plus Deep Cavern Bet basically means Winnie won't have a graveyard and Winnie won't have a hand, which makes it pretty impossible to actually get anything done. However, the Slav does die to a Braid pretty easily, and the Bat could also die to a Braid pretty easily, so Winnie has tools, for sure.
All right. Well, there's Duress. We're going to see which tool Piper will take away from
But
Winnie.
also being able to duress into the bat makes
Yes.
it so that both the removal spells for the bat can be taken away, and then the removal spell must be top decked at that point.
Yes.
Yeah, and based on what y'all said, it sounds like this is a really difficult time to play combo, right? Between the Duresses, between the bats. And between the graveyard removal, right? There's just so much going on. It seems like it's very difficult to get a combo off, right? You lose a couple of your pieces, and it seems like it's really difficult to set up at that point. So maybe going forward, something to consider as we're heading into Thunder Junction is, are there any ways to stabilize combos and what is going to be responsible for it. Something to think about heading into our future VML weeks here. But yes, that is Lazov, and that is very interesting cause to the board state right now and to affecting the yard state. Now we have Deep Cavern Bat, and the bat takes the removal. Makes sense. And now that is another Capenna land off the top, as we're going to see Nissa enter the battlefield, looks like.
Ooh, I like this Nissa quite a bit because this land's going to enter the battlefield untapped as well because it's spelunking. We love spelunking here.
Yeah. I play Amulet Titan in Modern, so like.
Is spelunking seeing play in Modern at all for that reason?
There's usually 1 to 2 copies in Amulet Titan.
Okay, that's interesting.
Because it's effectively another amulet if you have one of them.
Okay,
Right.
so Piper looks like she's going to be missing a land here. Still lots to do, but it's important to remember that Titania does have reach. So it's not easy pickings anymore for the bats. So what can Piper do to disrupt Winnie's situation right now? Because it seems like their board state is just on a roll right now. Once Temur Rap starts, it doesn't stop. So what can Piper do here to stabilize, especially on 3 lands?
I think killing the Nissa is a high priority target because this is how Winnie's going to combo off. It does get, like, killing the Titania gets the bat through, but that's kind of not a priority because Winnie's a combo deck. If Winnie gets the combo off, Winnie wins the game. If Winnie does not get the combo off, Winnie does not win the game. And it's pretty simple. It's pretty, in the brass tacks, that's pretty much how simple it is.
Yeah. I mean, Piper also does know Winnie's hand, knows that there are no no Capenna lands in the current hand, and so feels that the Nissa is pretty safe and wants to try to kill them as quickly as possible.
Ooh, mill 2 lands. That's a really good mill. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
More aftermath analyst here. And we do have a Beseju also in Winnie's hand and a Virtue of Strength in the Adventure Zone right now. So, what are we going to see next?
I love the idea of the Adventure Zone.
The Adventure Zone.
Yeah.
All right.
I carry around the token in my box, and I'm just like, why would I just get this out? I just like tuck it under my playmat a lot of the time because it's so weird.
Are we about to see this combo go off here? Nissa is just making this happen right now for Winnie here. The only question is, what is Winnie going to do with all of this land right now? Is there any way to stabilize the board? Looks like Virtuous Strength's going to enter the board.
You gotta have Virtue Strength out so you can make more mana. So you can get Sacrifice Aftermath Analyst, so you can get more mana. Because as you can see, getting more mana is really important. Unfortunately, there's not a lot she can do with it. There's no Memory Deluge to cast. There's nothing in the hand. So, you know, that Titania being away is really helpful there. Yes.
So yeah, a lot of mana here. Not much to do with it. Piper draws on, again, not another land, so Urtai cannot be a factor here, but we do have a means to draw cards here. So Piper, looking for more answers, goes for 2 more cards. She's looking for some lands, I would bet, and maybe a way to stop this. The Urtai is really good, and that is an Abrade off the top, an Abrade. I think Winnie's wanted to see something a little stronger there, but the Abrade does hit the bat. That does free a spell.
I think, and this might just be lethal because with so much mana, this World Soul's Rage can go face.
Y'all know better than I do here. Combo decks, they're a mystery. Yeah, this is huge. This is going to be a huge explosion of sorts. Here comes World Soul Rage for a lot.
This is definitely a case where I'd like Arena to do the math for me.
Yeah, I hadn't seen too much from World Soul Rage. So, like, that was, I'm not going to say it was a shock because that's only 2 life, right? That was an explosion of sorts. So now
we get because it was X damage. That's right.
Exactly. So now here's where the first second comes into play, right? Piper is going to have to assume the role of aggro here. Correct me if I'm wrong, because as we see, the lifeblood of combo is if you let combo do its thing, you're gonna die probably. So this is quite the hand here from Piper. 2 bats, 2 lands. Wow.
I would
not-
certainly keep this hand because any black source, you get to follow up both the bats with Gix. And bat into Gix is so nice because you're not actually losing life because the bat has lifelink. And you're getting so much card advantage.
Winnie's hand is a little rough. Without a single green source, Winnie can't do very much. A braid exists, but it's not going to win the game. And there's no spelunking coming down. There's no virtue. Like Winnie needs a penne pasta land that can get brought back with virtue strength right now.
Yeah, no green there as we go back to Piper's turn, and she is pretty well situated, did get the third land in Takanuma, probably going to see play as a land here, and it's like, do you take another thing from their hand, or do you go out on the offensive while the coast looks clear? And that is exactly what Piper's going to do. Piper wants to see that draw.
That works. Gain a life with the bat, then lose life. Ooh,
Oh.
Oh, this is looking really rough for
Ah.
Winnie. Yeah, just saying this game's probably pretty over unless Winnie can find that green land and find it really soon. And even then, I'm not even sure if that does a whole lot.
Yeah, Urtai being in the hand makes this very complicated. Duress off for Piper, getting rid of the ill-timed explosion from Winnie, Preacher of the Schism, and again, just going all out, and that is just no green lands right now.
Yeah.
This
I think
is
at this point, Piper's just trying to close out the game as fast as she can.
Yeah, not mulliganing that hand at the very beginning is just not having that green. I think this game is completely different if the Capenna land was a green land, right? Like being
Yeah.
Maestro Speeder specifically, and then another
Oh
Maestro.
my god.
Wow.
Oh my, that's it. It's
Yeah.
over. It's just over. It's unfortunate.
That was really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. But the first two games, though, both of those were really good and really intense and everything you want to see in the matchup. Unfortunately, that's not even getting VML. That's just called getting magicked. What happens there? Like, if you don't find a source like that can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime, any place. You have to accept that, unfortunately, with the game. But nonetheless, GG to both players. Just quite a story behind both of their climbs into the playoffs. And again, good luck to everyone advancing this week. So, a few things here in closing. I want to know with y'all, how do we find you on the internet?
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Dana Fischer MTG. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Twitch is Fisher Magic, and you can find me around at a lot of the competitive tournaments. I'll be at DreamHack Dallas. I'll be at MXP Bay Area this coming April.
Woo!
How about you, Kuro?
I'm on Discord under my username Arcades _. You want to send me a message or don't? It's fine. I don't have a very strong internet presence, but I am here.
Well, first of all, let me make sure I cover this in closing, but I do want to thank y'all for being here. This was a very fun night. So I want to give a big thanks to Wizards. Phoebe, let's shout out Phoebe. Much love for you, Phoebe. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you. To our
Well,
admin
you could,
team.
it just would be really dark.
That's
to us,
true.
the casters, the players, because again, we love the competitive games we saw tonight. Great job to everyone. And of course, to you, the viewers, for watching us. We really, really appreciate that. So again, just look out for when to sign up for the next season. Again, we do have many more weeks here for this season, but again, just keep an eye out because there will be more VML this season, and just the community is wonderful. Win or lose, it's always such a great atmosphere here. So again, I want to express my deepest heartfelt thank you to Dana for being here. It was wonderful meeting with you, casting with you, and working with you, and we look forward to seeing you not only compete in the VML soon, but also just out there. Dana is present at so many different events in Magic the Gathering, and just always a warm, welcoming presence here. So Dana, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say here?
No, well, thank you so much for having me on. This was super fun. I used to do some commentary back before the pandemic, but I haven't really done it since. And so this was a great opportunity. And thank you so much for having me on.
Of course, it was an honor having you here. And of course, to Kuro, I love working with you, Kuro. So hopefully we get a chance to cast together again next season. And
Absolutely.
again, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Kuro.
No, that's it.
Okay. I want to again extend a thank you to everyone in chat for watching. We enjoyed having y'all here, and we will be back next Friday You don't want to miss it. It will be our top 16. So again, please join us here next week, same time, same place. And again, thank you. And everybody have a good evening. Thank you so much for being here.